Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles. I'm here with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Cowa. So I got to tell you, I'm so excited about this interview, Tracy, with Erin Fletter. I met her last week via John Francis of Zor Forum, and we talked, and I was so excited I had to get her on the show. I think you're going to love her. So she is a serial entrepreneur and a five-time cookbook author with 30-year food and hospitality industry history. She founded Sticky Fingers Cooking, a franchise brand that spans coast to coast, teaching over 150,000 students. Sticky Fingers cooking classes combine fresh ingredients, global flavors, math, geography, nutrition, food history, and a big dash of tasty fun. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's good to see you again. It's nice to meet you, Tracy.
You too, Erin. I'm excited to have you on the show today. So I understand that you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author. You have somewhat of an unconventional child history, right? Child background, childhood.
Yep.
So what do you remember as your first inspiration from childhood?
I was born in Northern California, right outside of San Francisco, to incredibly hippie parents. Very unconventional duo, my mom and my dad, and so I was raised with a lot of freedom, a lot of exploration, a lot of free to be you and me. I don't know if you, for those of you that grew up in the '70s, you may know that reference. And my mom in particular, she was that mom. She was that hippie mom that made everything from scratch. She was baking our own bread. She was making yogurt. She was making preserves and jams, and everything that we ate had a purpose. I was that kid that wasn't allowed to have any candy. I wasn't allowed to have any sugar. I had to have carob as my cupcakes. No chocolate cupcakes for me. And so, it was really although I felt a little bit different growing up, especially when we moved to Southern California, I felt a little bit different. I was also very proud of my upbringing. She also was like, sewing my own clothes. I mean, definitely Earth Mama for sure. She prioritized travel as well, and both of my parents prioritized travel and learning about other cultures. I was raised as a vegetarian, which was pretty unusual in the 1970s and 80s, even in California. And that kind of set me apart as well. And so when we started traveling the world, just my mom and I, we would be somewhere for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. It was really, especially like when we were in Africa, it was almost challenging to be a vegetarian in Africa. It was also a really wonderful way to connect with people and to talk about food. And that was really, looking back, of course, like hindsight is 2020, as they say. And looking back, it's just like, well, of course that some of that uh, experience and passion and that curiosity has been infused into Sticky Fingers cooking.
There's no doubt what you're doing is an extension and an expression of who you are. 4 to 6 weeks is a long time in an area. It's almost like immersion in many ways. I think when you travel and you're only there 7 days or whatever, you really don't get the full feel of that culture, nor the food, because you're probably, just barely experiencing that. So tell me what you learned and how you've taken some of that travel experience and this hippy dippy upbringing and then brought that into Sticky Fingers.
I couldn't agree more with you, Rebecca. I mean, it's really hard to be somewhere for 7 to 10 days. And a lot of, I think also Americans, we tend to say like, oh, we're going to go do Rome or we're going to go do Tokyo, and see, and I get that. I think it's wonderful to be able to go on quick jaunts and to be able to experience parts of the world. But to really kind of know a place is to be there for an extended amount of time. And that is something that I learned at an early age. I started traveling with my mom as early as 5, and we really started taking these really big trips. I've been lucky enough to I've been to all 7 continents, and we would take the globe and we would spin it and spin it and spin it, and then close our eyes. And she would always let me do it, and I would put my finger down, and typically that's where we'd go, or somewhere around that vicinity. And staying for that amount of time was really, really impactful because, again, as a kid, you don't really realize the impacts until looking back. But, I was like a little social scientist, being in different cultures, realizing that, wait a second, like humans, we all share a food as our connector. Not only does it sustain us as it's necessary for life, it also is a way to express who we are as a people, where we're from, our culture. We celebrate with food. We have traditions around food. We mourn with food. And it's a really wonderful way to get to know a place. I don't know anybody that doesn't travel in any parts of the world and you're not trying different foods, right? And so it was hugely, hugely impactful, and traveling for extended amounts of time has always been kind of a basis of when I get to travel, and when I'm fortunate enough to travel. My husband and I have been together for 30 years almost, and I always say that our second date was 10 months backpacking
Oh,
throughout Europe. And so we
wow.
only knew each other for a few months, and really it was okay, maybe it was more like our fifth date, but we put on backpacks and just traveled for 10 months together through Europe, eating our way throughout Europe as well. So extended travel, I think, is really important. It's really shaped me as a person to be um, curious about other people, to be tolerant about other people, and to really embrace other cultures.
Mhm.
So I wanted to give that to some of our students that take our Sticky Fingers cooking classes. So that's, again, very much infused into what we do.
That is so interesting that you said that we celebrate with food, we mourn with food. I always think, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners always think that food is kind of like the byproduct or something additional that's also there. Like we're going to mourn, we're going to a funeral, or we're going to a party. Oh, and there's going to be food. But the way you're phrasing it, it sounds like the food is more central to the event itself. Can you speak to that part of it a little bit?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Tracy. I mean, I think that if I love asking people, what is your favorite holiday, and whatever it might be, with whatever faith you follow or whatever traditions you follow, whatever your favorite holiday is, you're going to have a favorite food that's associated with that.
Mhm.
I mean, you just are. My family and we celebrate Christmas, and we have a tradition. And if you ask my children, they'll say the same thing. Is that we have, and Rebecca, you might really love this with your Swiss roots, but we do on Christmas Eve. It is fondue, and yes, it is
Yes.
fondue every Christmas Eve. You know, we love celebrating at my house, and birthdays are a big deal. You can choose anything you want for your birthday dinner. You may not choose fondue. Fondue is only
Yes.
reserved for Christmas Eve, and that is it. And it's really quite, I mean, it becomes such an integral part of what we do, in my little nuclear family. And, as cultures, we do that as well. 100%. And you bring certain foods to different events, and the food really, I mean, you gather. What do they say? I mean, the heart of the home is the kitchen.
The
It
kitchen.
is 100%. Even if you don't cook, and I think like I loved your question, Tracy, because honestly, I believe that in the United States, we've gotten so far away from being in our kitchens, and we have gotten so far away from preparing and maybe even sitting around that dinner table other than Thanksgiving with family, that DoorDash and all of these things, and everybody's very, very busy, that we kind of forget that food is the center component to many of the special occasions that we celebrate in our lives. And
So true.
yeah.
So true, Erin. I'm a big fondue fan, but as you were uh, talking, what came up for me is even for people who can't travel and get that cultural experience that you were able to get with your mom by extended vacations, let's call them, or immersions, or whatever we want to call them, we can bring some of those cultural experiences to our table at home by making Peruvian food or Italian food. We can actually bring that to our table, and our children can begin to experience those cultures through the flavors in many, many ways. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. And you just kind of got to the very heart of Sticky Fingers Cooking. I mean, that's what we do. We, when I started the company over 13 years ago, there was people just like, wait, you're not making cupcakes and macaroni and cheese and chicken fingers? What's happening? I don't think any of the children, none of the kids in the U.S. are going to be interested in this. And quite the opposite happens. We've written a new recipe every single week of the school year for the last 13 years. We have thousands of recipes, and all of it, I'd say over 90% of those are based in countries and cultures maybe found outside of the US. And so, yeah, children are going to be making Ethiopian food and learning what injera bread is. And that's actually the most fun because
You get to eat with
it's
your
tradition.
fingers, right?
You eat with your fingers.
Yes.
Oh, yes, you've got it. Oh, and it's just like to be able to tell kids, in their school, like, oh, yeah, we're gonna make sure that we have nice, clean hands, but there are no utensils allowed. That's about the best thing in the world. And then, and then the next week we'll be heading to Korea, and the next week we'll be heading to Germany, and then, like you said, Peru or Afghanistan, wherever it might be. We do little mini trips for kids every single week that they're in a Sticky Fingers cooking class, and they learn about the culture. They learn what it's like to be a kid that goes to school in Tokyo, or what it's like to be a kid that is going to school in Mongolia. What does that look like? In addition to all the other things that we teach through cooking, but the cultural significance is where I completely geek out. I love it. I absolutely love it.
That is so cool. So tell us further. There you are traveling the world with your mom, backpacking with your husband to be throughout Europe. When did Sticky Fingers Cooking arise? Like, did you just come back and say, okay, now we're going to open up? Like, how did it come about?
Tracy, I so wish it was that. I wish it happened that naturally. And in many ways it did. In many ways, of course, like I talked about hindsight, but typically, I think that we would all agree, looking back at our lives and the paths that we took, there's nothing linear about it. You don't press a button on the elevator and you're, up up at the penthouse. It doesn't quite work that way. My road had lots of wonderful twists and turns that all make perfect sense now. But no, it didn't. It didn't really. It was, I had this wonderful upbringing where fresh food was paramount, where learning about other cultures was embraced, and then luckily I found the most amazing partner in my husband, and we shared that the same goals and the same values. And then, we started having children, and I always kind of fancied myself as an artist. I'm kind of an art school dropout, but I went to, I always loved visual arts and always called myself an artist. And it wasn't until I became a mother that I started cooking, because it was a necessity. It's an essential life skill, and I needed to feed people. And what really kind of happened is that I realized that even though I had small children at home, that I could also relive my travels, and I could transport myself and my family. We no longer could take trips for, a month at a time or 10 months at a time. And, it was I could transport us as a family through food. And I became very, very bold, and I had this, and I still do have this fearlessness around cooking, where I felt where I didn't really have with being a an artist, like a visual artist. I was always a little insecure about my painting or my sculpture, and maybe a little shy. And with cooking, it was just like, oh, here you go. Look at what I came up with. And well, if you don't like it, I have to feed you in 3 hours anyway. So let's just keep going. And I just found this medium of this artistic expression within myself that I've never looked back. I mean, I have a collection of like 200 cookbooks I had to have in my
Oh my
in
goodness.
my very small house. I had to get I got these bookshelves made to hold my cookbooks. And if you find me on a Saturday night, I'm pretty much curled up on my couch reading a cookbook like it's a novel. So really, like, cooking became
Oh,
not only a form of self-expression for myself, and a way to express myself and to, feel expressive and artistic. It also became a way to show my love to my friends and my family. So I still unwind to this day by cooking dinner every night, or most nights, if we're not ordering pizza, but most nights.
so exciting. I have several grandchildren, Erin, and we love to cook together. They don't get to do a lot of that with very busy parents, but they get to do it with me as a grandparent. And one of the things I highlight is not just the variety of food, but the presentation of the food. I make sure the table is gorgeous when they sit down, and the way the food is presented. They have hundreds of pictures of things they've cooked with me because it's so pretty, right? It's just so pretty. Where at other times it's just sustenance. They got to eat, they got to run to the next class, they got to do whatever. Here's my question though, Erin. You talking about creating recipe after recipe after recipe in these various cultures. This sounds really complex to me if I was going to be a franchisee, but it's not. Can you talk more about how you've taken all of this creativity and then shared it with your franchisees, where it really is a simple business model?
It is a simple business model. And to kind of get back to what Tracy was saying, like how this all started was, again, this love of food, cooking with my family. My daughters then started to go to school. And we have three daughters. My husband and I have three beautiful daughters. And our firstborn daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 2 years old, which was just terrifying. And she's 23, and she still has type 1 diabetes, and it's still every day is a little bit different. And so through Ava, I was introduced to after school enrichment, and that's when I decided, like, wow, look, she's doing taekwondo, she's safe, because all of her medical supplies and everything were housed at the school. And so I fell in love with the after school enrichment model. I just thought, this is incredible for busy families. We had the added benefit of having a special needs child, and knowing that, hey, we know that everybody in this building knows who our daughter is. They know her health concerns. They know everything's at the nurse's office. So we had that comfort as well. And then I realized, like, oh gosh, how can we do this with cooking, like Taekwondo, and there's Legos, and, engineering and science and art, and let's figure cooking. And so, yes, to get back to what you were saying, Rebecca, about it sounds very, very complex. And what we do is very important and very complex, is that Sticky Fingers Cooking, we are a non-brick and mortar cooking school. So that means that we don't have our own storefronts. Parents are not running across town, trying to, be on time to start cooking schools, and and we're not trying to get enrollment from parents that have to drive across town. We offer cooking in every school in the communities that we serve, so it makes it very easy and convenient for parents, and then of course for children to it's a very low entry, and a way to be curious. Curiosity is one of my favorite words, especially when we're a kid, to be curious about everything. So they can be curious about soccer, and learn about soccer, and then they can be curious about cooking, and maybe it ignites something in them, and they want to continue this love of cooking, or maybe they just have an appreciation for it and they try it for one session, whatever it might be. So we have a lot of moving parts. We have chef instructors that work with us, that are at different locations every afternoon teaching these classes. We have, well over 150,000 kids in our programs. Yes, we have new recipes every single week of the year, and we have distilled it all down into a simplified model. It's actually a very, very simple business model. And we have worked for the last 13 years to simplify all of our processes and procedures and logistics. And we have technology to support us to make what we do very, very simple. And it's really to connect with kids with a very small classroom. We only have anywhere from 8 to maybe 12 kids in a class with the same chef instructor week after week, and they form a relationship, they form a bond, and they go through a journey of learning about cooking from scratch, without a kitchen, and they make everything from scratch while learning about global cuisine, global cultures. They learn about math and science, because that's just integrated into cooking, along with language, and nutrition, of course. Yeah, so we've really simplified the model completely.
Yeah, I like that you brought the technology piece in, because offloading some of the day-to-day by using technology really allows the franchisee to focus on the core business, right? So I like that you mentioned the technology. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rebecca and Tracy, you're both entrepreneurs. You've started your own businesses. It's damn hard to start your own small business. And I like to say that, there's the statistics out there is that 80% of small businesses in the US fail within 5 years. And it's not because of passion or purpose or excitement or anything or drive, nothing. I call it death by a million paper cuts. It's all of the things that go into the day-to-day of running and starting a business and launching it that really bog people down. That's
yes,
why I love the franchise model.
me too. Me too. Okay, I gotta ask a question, Tracy. I'm sorry, I probably just
Okay.
put over your hand. Do you have a theme, a motto, something that you live your life by? So maybe it was a
I
book.
do. Yes, I do. Well, I mentioned the word simple. It's actually my favorite word, because you can't get too simple without understanding all the complexities and distilling it all down. So I love the word simple. And my motto, it's actually my husband and I, it's how we make decisions. And it's called less responsibility and more fun. And
Cool.
That's great. That's
Tracy,
great.
try that one
yes,
on.
and
How does that feel for you?
It was nice and light. How can we have less responsibility and more fun? So, Okay, just really quick question. Out of all of the types of food, the culinary major amazing experiences that you've had throughout your life, what is your one favorite type of food or food? I know you probably can't narrow it down to just one, I'm sure.
I know it's impossible, isn't it? You know, I absolutely love Asian food, particularly Japanese food. I love the fresh flavors. I never tire of it. So I'm always up for Japanese food. But I have to say, I think I have to be politically correct and it's true that adore Italian food. My husband and I co-own a fabulous restaurant here in Denver, Colorado, called Barolo Grill, and it's a world-renowned restaurant. My husband is an incredible restaurateur, and we focus on Northern Italian cuisine. And we have spent really years in Italy over the last 30 years. If you break it all down, we go to Italy every single year. We just had a wonderful exchange student that lived with us for an entire year, and she's from Rome. Hi, Selena. And so you know, I have Italian blood coursing through my veins, just because I absolutely love everything about Italy.
The culture, the food, your
Yeah.
husband bringing part of northern Italy right there to Denver where everyone can experience it. So I'm gonna have to make a trip to Denver, I think, to go to your,
Yeah.
your restaurant.
Please do. I would love to. I would love to host you, and we can have a beautiful dinner together. We talked about, you know, we talked about earlier about traveling and how important that is. So that aspect has infused into my husband's restaurant. For the last 25 years, he closes the restaurant for 2 weeks out of the year, and he takes the entire staff to Italy. They just returned actually on their
Wow.
annual trip. And so, you know, again, it goes back to like we truly we're truly obsessed with food and culture and traveling. And so not only is that infused in Sticky Fingers cooking, but it is also in his restaurant as well.
Barolo.
That
Oh
is
my goodness. How
okay.
fun.
Yeah.
I have a burning question.
Yes.
So I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn, and you were talking about the kids not only learning to cook, but learning life skills. Do you think you can speak to that a little bit?
Well, I would say that feeding yourself is the most essential life skill for
Yeah.
sure. So, yeah, and I know again, it kind of it's you know, it's a very simple answer. And in the US, a lot of families, you know, we tend to forget that there's very fast, convenient foods and all of that. But really, like learning to shop for food, to cook for yourself, to cook for your friends and family. I always tell my three daughters that, okay, look, as you know, as long as you can cook, you'll always have friends. I mean, and that is for sure. So, so it's, you know, it is an essential life skill to be able to feed yourself, and to be able to know what you're eating is really important for longevity and for health and for wellness, for happiness, all of the things that go into good nutrition. And you know, to be able to, it's also very economical to be able to
Yeah.
cook for yourself as well. I mean, it can be by people's food budgets here in the US and families that dine out a lot. It's pretty massive. And so to be able to cook for yourself and sustain yourself is an essential life skill. I also know, not only do I believe, but I know to be true that you can learn just about anything through cooking. So it really just enhances everything that kids are learning in schools. You know, it brings to life math concepts that they're learning that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense. But you know, if you're cutting a pancake or a pizza into eighths or sixteenths or whatever it might be, or if you're measuring out a cup of flour, you know, in our classes, instead of doing, if a recipe calls for 1 cup of flour, our chef instructor will often do eighth of a cup and, and then really reinforce the concepts of math behind that. Language, being able to read, to be able to follow a recipe. All our older students, we follow a Montessori kind of all of our curriculum is kind of follows a Montessori model, and so the older children are really teaching the younger children. So there's a lot of reading that happens, a lot of language skills, and then of course, like when children are making their own butter from scratch, well, that's science, delicious science. When they're making an emulsification of a salad dressing, that is science as well. When they're macerating berries to put over their beautiful French toast or waffles or whatever it might be, that's also science. So we get to incorporate scrumptious science into all of our curriculum as well. So, we've even done cooking and yoga classes. We really can teach anything through cooking. We have a inflatable globes. They're like beach balls, and they're globes. And so we also teach about the world and geography and where the recipe is from in the world. So
Wow.
all of these things really tie into life skills, in my opinion. And I think at the heart of it, being able to feed and sustain yourself is paramount.
It is paramount. This brings up a bunch of thoughts in my head. One of which is that it also helps with time management or project management skills, that these foods come out at the right time and, and are presented in a way. That to me, when I was working with Ebony, who just turned 12 yesterday, my granddaughter, was the most difficult thing for her to learn, was how to time things and manage the overall project of serving a meal. The other thought that kind of popped in my head was years ago, we were doing some research on health and well-being and aging. And we traveled to Madrid to meet a centurion and to interview him on how it is he was able to live this long and healthy, and he would be out, playing tennis and doing whatever he was doing. And the number one piece of advice he gave us was, he said, never, at least once a day, have a meal with someone else. Do not eat alone. That this bringing people together from food actually increases our bonding, our connection, and our ability to live healthy lives and longer lives. And I think there's a lot of research out that supports just that. And then the third thing that kind of popped up in my head was we had an employee some years back that was in her late 20s, and she didn't have some of these life skills. And then when she finally learned it, she said, I feel like I'm adulting. This is a life skill to cook and take care of yourself, so you're not dependent on others to do that. And you're taking charge of your own body and your own financial and physical well-being. So call it adulting, call it whatever it is. I think our younger generations are struggling with that because of the fast food and those kinds of things. So that was a lot of yada, yada, yada to say, you are incredible. I so admire you, Erin, and how you pulled all of these pieces together, the travel, the food, the science, all of that, the fun, the simplicity, how you've pulled it all together to give these children wonderful skills and a way to bond with one another and to live more successful lives in the future. I'm just in awe of you, Erin, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. And Sticky Fingers is not about me. I mean, it is not. I have a team. I work with an amazing team of people, and we've been working together for the greater part of a decade, just building this together. So it's not about one person. That it would be impossible for me to do all of this alone, and I do not do all of this alone. Just have some wonderful friends and teammates that have helped propel this and to build it to where it is today.
That's
So we're at the top of the hour. Tracy, anything from you, hon?
Well, in addition to deconstructing my life to simplicity and less responsibility and fun.
Yeah,
I've
that's a
learned this
great one.
hour. Yeah, I just want to say that, to be quite honest with you, the way you summed up those life skills really was beginning to blow my mind, because every life skill that you could actually think of is involved somehow or can be demonstrated through cooking. So you're definitely the right person to be at the forefront of Sticky Fingers Cooking and to really demonstrate to these future generations about taking care of your health, taking charge of your health, cooking for yourself, and demonstrating these life skills. And also, I just think I'm just a big fan. You're just beautiful inside and out. So that's how I have that's all I have to say.
Oh my gosh, you're so kind. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, it helps that I've been like obsessively thinking about food and cooking for the last 30 plus years. So, this is something that comes naturally to me. But one of the unintended byproducts of Sticky Fingers Cooking that I did not foresee, that has been absolutely beautiful and maybe the most beautiful expression of teaching children how to cook, brings to what Rebecca just said, is that we are finding that 6-year-olds are coming home from their Sticky Fingers cooking classes saying, you know, I want to make kale pesto. Can we go to the grocery store and buy kale? And it freaks out the parents quite a lot, but they don't say no. How do you say no to a 6-year-old that wants to buy kale? And what happens is something that I could have never predicted. They go to the grocery store, they buy the ingredients, they come home, they cook it, because they realize, back to what you said, Tracy and Rebecca, about like time management, right? And they realize, wait a second, my 6-year-old prepared this from scratch, not in the kitchen, in under an hour. I think we could probably do this at home, even if it's a family that doesn't cook together on a regular basis. They kind of, and their child's pushing them to do this. And so they realize how, again, simple the recipes are, that are introducing nutrition and different flavors. The child is then teaching the family what they learned. And
Yeah.
then do you know what they do? They sit around that dinner table. And it gives me goosebumps every single time, because it was not something that was a master plan. And this is the most beautiful outcome of what we do. And it happens every single day. And we get feedback every single day by that beautiful, simple magic that happens.
It is magic how food pulls people together, in this case, children, teaching adults how to come together and around food. Um, Before we close out, how do people get hold of you, Erin, if they want to learn more
Yes.
about Sticky Fingers?
Yeah, so we have 2 websites. Our main website is stickyfingerscooking.com. That's really, really fun if the majority of people that haven't heard of us before, you can go and you can click around, kind of see what we do, what offerings we have. Better yet, we have a recipe resource. We call it the recipe box, and we have thousands of recipes, but we have about 900 of our recipes up for open consumption for everybody. Rebecca, you and your granddaughter might enjoy browsing and looking at all of our recipes. You can look it up, of course, if you're looking at geographic location, if you're looking up a particularly, like, oh, I have a bunch of tomatoes, or for those people right now that have gardens, everybody has too much zucchini. So you can look up recipes, by ingredient or anything like that. And so that's a really kind of fun way to kind of see what we do and what we teach. And you'll see part of our curriculum online as well in every single one of our recipes, and including with really bad food jokes too, because you got to be funny and have fun. And then if anybody's interested in our franchise opportunities, we are open for franchise opportunities in 46 states. So really nationwide. And our our website is stickyfingerscookingfranchise.com. Bit of a mouthful, but you can find us and learn more about our franchise opportunities, and we'd love to talk to you.
Thank you, Erin, for being here. Really appreciate it. And thank you to those that are listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made. Make sure to like, comment, share Erin's interview. And of course, we'll see you next week on another episode.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Rebecca. I'm huge fans. Thank you.
So fun.